Good to see you. Thank you for joining me. This will be a little bit different, I suppose, from most of the videos that I've put up during the lockdown, but I want very briefly and succinctly, if I can, to share one or two thoughts that relate to the whole subject of abortion. I do so with a certain amount of fear and trepidation. I've discovered in these days that there's great value in communicating digitally, remotely, by video. Just in the last week, in fact, I got a message from a friend in Nairobi offering encouragement about the content of videos that I put up previously. Now, my children tell me that I'm Mr. Noisy from the Mr. Men, but even so, I don't think I could quite project my voice as far as Nairobi. So there, in that one fact, there's evidence, isn't there, that this digital way of communicating has great value. When it comes to a subject like abortion, however, I think its value is very much tested. This is a highly emotive subject. I would much rather either be at the front of a building talking to a group of people, or be sitting face to face speaking to an individual or a small group. That way there's much more interaction. You can leave comments and so on, or send private messages. You'd be very welcome to. But the face to face interaction is muchly preferable, isn't it? And of course, in the space of a short video, I'm not going to be able to say very much at all. I will be honest and say that I'm really hoping that the people who will listen to this are people who don't have the same opinion currently as me, or people whose mind is not made up, or people who were raised in or used to have a kind of Christian pro-life view, but are drifting perhaps to a different opinion at the minute. And I respect people's rights to have their opinion, of course. I want to learn from people who have a different opinion from me. And of course, people with exactly the same opinion as me are listening to this. I wouldn't want you to turn off now. Do continue to engage, because I hope there'll be something helpful for you too. What I want to say very simply is this. Thinking in a much wider sense than the particular question of abortion for the meantime, don't we sometimes forget about the question of facts and jump to the moral questions? The questions are related, but sometimes I think we fail to heed the distinction. So in any situation, there's the question, what are the facts? And then once the facts are established, come the moral questions. What should we do in light of these facts? And in small and trivial ways, you'll see that we sometimes blur the distinction. Not that long ago, I saw my son and daughter do something that I know they're not normally allowed to do. I was immediately going to tell them off and stop them, and perhaps tell them that they wouldn't get sweets later or whatever because they'd been naughty. It transpired though that because they'd been particularly good in helping with something earlier, my wife, unbeknownst to me, had made an exception and allowed them to do this particular thing on this particular occasion. I was forgetting the question of facts. I was assuming the fact to be that they were being naughty, but that was not actually in fact the case. And had I gone on and told them off, I would have carried out a moral response to what I thought was the facts of the case. But I would have been wrong. And my moral decision would have been mistaken because I was assuming the facts to be other than they actually were. And you see this much more seriously when there are high-profile court cases going on concerning alleged criminal activity. If somebody's accused of murder or sexual violence or corruption or whatever the case might be, very often, before ever the verdict of innocent or guilty has been reached, We'll be talking about what should be done with them. How long should they go to prison for? There'll be people perhaps who are saying bring back the death penalty. But all that's jumping the gun, isn't it? Until we know what the facts are, we're not going to be able to make a moral decision. If the fact is that they're innocent, all this talk about suitable sentence is neither here nor there. It's only when the facts are established clearly that the moral decision can be made, and whether it's a trivial thing or a big thing, if we jump to the making of the moral decision before we've established the facts, well, we're very likely to get it badly wrong, aren't we? I want to suggest then that when it comes to this whole question of abortion, there is a factual question that tentatively and with respect, I want to suggest we don't always give the attention it deserves. The factual question is, what is the status of the being in the womb of the pregnant woman? Is it already truly human and thus entitled to the dignity of a human being? Or is it just something that might one day become human? Now, you'll not be anyway surprised to know that I believe that from ever we're aware of its existence, it's to be viewed as human and treated thus with the dignity that belongs to a human being. I believe that to be the very clear teaching of Scripture, and I believe actually that that clear teaching of Scripture is echoed in our common experience and in our scientific knowledge. I don't believe I've ever heard a pregnant woman say to me that she has something in her that might one day become human. I've spoken to all sorts of women when they've discovered that they're pregnant. Some delighted, some devastated. Never, though, have any said, well, that this might become a person one day. Or as Peter Linus from Evangelical Alliance very thoughtfully pointed out, when there's a royal child on the way, nobody talks about a royal fetus. From ever the princess's pregnancy is known, it's described as a royal baby. And again, in personal experience, I think most of us will recognise that. And then too, there's the scientific stuff. Now, I'm no scientist, I'm no medical doctor, but like many people, I have sat in when my wife or partner, maybe in your case, or daughter, granddaughter, friend, whatever the case might be, during their pregnancy is receiving a scan, and sometimes the images are clearer than others, but when you hear that little heartbeat, when you see the baby moving, when sometimes you can pick out very clearly arms and legs and toes and fingers and face, well, it's not your immediate reaction, is it? There's something that might become human one day. Certainly wasn't what I felt. I don't imagine it's what very many feel. Now, there are all kinds of complicated questions regarding abortion. One short video is never going to get remotely close to raising them all, let alone addressing them. But I do want, with respect, to suggest that sometimes, whether consciously or unconsciously, the question of fact is overlooked. What, in fact, is the status of the being within the womb? The moral questions as regards when, if ever, abortion would be permissible, we will only be in a position to answer those questions in any way close to sensibly when we have first faced up to the question of fact. I've outlined very briefly what I believe to be the answer to that question about fact. You may or may not disagree. I urge you, with respect, to consider carefully the question of fact. before you jump to the question of morality. God bless.